Okay, so the first thing is if you're actually going to try to solve the problems in senior care or in the aging space, the first thing you have to do is understand who the constituents are that are actually involved in this problem and really understand what their needs are. So very simply, we look at this problem and say there's three very important constituents involved. There's the older consumer, whose number one goal and problem is they just want to stay in their homes and their communities longer. There's the family caregiver, who really just wants to know information about how their parent is doing as they're aging, and to know somebody's going to be there for them if they're not able to be in their busy caregiver roles. And the third is the healthcare system or the senior living community that wants to get visibility into what's happening with the older consumer so that if something happens, they can actually get to it before it becomes an exacerbated, expensive problem. So if those are the three goals, one of the things that we always ask ourselves, what industry do we compete in? And really what we've defined it as, it's about a platform about taking the older consumer and getting them connected in a simple way that allows them to actually feel supported and connected with a technology, yes, but more importantly, the support that gets them to be able to adapt the technology, to keep using the technology long term, not something that gets stuck in a drawer right away because that doesn't help everyone, and to keep providing that service, to keep them engaged with the technology. And at that point, then you can actually start collecting data off the technology, analyzing it so that you can get family caregivers and or the healthcare system or the senior living facility more engaged in seeing what might be happening with the older consumer so that you can intervene in a respectful and proper way before the problem becomes an expensive health episode. So that's really what we do. And when you really think about a lot of the companies that are out there in this space, really this is how it could be summarized, is this is how you can add value as a technology play in senior care. So specifically for GreatCall, what we provide is really three things. First of all is technology that enables independence. And again, I've heard a lot of talk today about the technology and how the technology adoption is speeding up. But really, technology adoption with older consumers, if we're going to solve the senior care problem, we have to understand that there are limitations of the technology adoption of the group that we're trying to help today. Maybe that will change, and it's changing very slowly. It is changing. There is a lot more smartphone usage, absolutely, in the 65+ segment. But the 65+ segment is a massive, huge group. We're not talking about the general 65+ market or the 50+ market. We're talking about the group of older Americans who really actually need help with their ADLs or with actually staying independent and in their homes longer. So that group who is starting to first be concerned about independence, their technology capabilities are much more limited. And if we ignore that, well, then you're just going to leave the entire market to me, so I guess that's okay. But my advice would be to not ignore that and actually really start thinking about the fact that their technology profile is different. So if you're going to solve these problems with technology, make sure you're thinking about that. So we do have a whole range of technology that we can put in the hands or on the bodies or in the homes of older consumers, whether it's a Bluetooth wearable for the most active and younger of our customers, through to smartphones, and yes, still flip phones. Anyone out there who's dealing with older consumers today knows that's an important technology. So we have created a line that has all of the smartphone capabilities built into a flip phone interface, to a mobile personal emergency response device, and then finally to in-home sensors that can collect information about activities of daily living so that those can be analyzed as well. So, but that's the technology. And again, we don't see ourselves as a technology company. Technology is just the means to the end. It's an evil that we actually need to deal with to get the results we want. What we really want to focus on are the services that you can provide once you've established that connectivity. Once you've established that technology or that connectivity with the older consumers. So whether that's medication adherence or whether that's brain games for improving mental acuity delivered through some of the devices, whether that's fall detection, which we offer in a lot of our services, or whether it's caregiver check-ins that are enabling, whether family caregivers that are looking to be able to do simple check-ins with their older consumer. So once you have that connectivity, you can offer a lot of different services through, and that is the key to actually keeping the independence that's necessary. So what has been our go-to-market strategy at GreatCall? We, luckily, have been focused on the consumer market a long time because the B2B to C market, or selling technologies through healthcare companies or senior living companies, has been a little bit slower to adopt over the last 10 years. And there's a lot of dead bodies lying on the road from, that's companies, lying on the road from people who've focused too early in trying to get healthcare companies to subsidize technology that's going to go into the hands of seniors for connected health strategies. So in the meantime, in the last 10 years, we started the company about 10 years ago, and we've been selling through to consumers through Best Buy and Amazon and Rite Aid, Walmart Pharmacy, et cetera, and driving our solutions into the hands of the older consumer, whether that's through the caregivers or directly to older consumers. And so over 10 years, we've been able to grow the company to about $300 million in annual revenues and over 1,000 employees now, actually. And so we've become really and profitable and still growing at a really, really good rate. And that's allowed us now in the last couple of years to start entering into the commercial healthcare and into the senior living space and offering our solutions into those companies who can put our technologies in the hands of their consumers or their customers to help their interactions with them. So that's a little bit about GreatCall. Let me move to some of the stories that we have gone through and how we've gotten to where we are. I guess some of the takeaways as I look at some of the younger technology companies that are looking at moving into this space. First of all, I remember we've had some crazy times. Everything from raising venture capital I did my first round of venture capital in 2007, and that money was literally running out in the summer of 2008. Do you remember what was happening in the summer of 2008? It was awesome. Lehman Brothers was about to go bankrupt. The entire place was completely collapsing. It was insane. So we literally had to decide whether to keep spending our money in the hopes that we were going to get that next venture round or whether to start slowing down. And I tell you right now, if we'd started slowing down, we probably never would have got the venture round because all the venture capitalists want to see that growth continuing. But we did actually just continue to go, put faith in the fact that if we continued to prove that we were capable, that we would get that financing. So after a very short bridge with our current investors, we did close another $40 million round of financing in August of 2008, which was really, really crazy. Some other things, I remember launching 5-Star. Our first personal emergency response service we launched was a classic. It was launching, and we had John Walsh as our spokesperson, the America's Most Wanted guy, and he was doing a reunion show of America's Most Wanted on Fox. It was a 2-hour special. It was going to be awesome. We're like, oh my gosh, we should have this big television commercial. It's going to be amazing because he's the host of the show, and then he's going to come on endorsing our product. It's going to be huge. It's going to be awesome. Taking this big risk and spending all this money. And of course, we ran the spot, and it was absolutely crickets. So it was really amazing. So it was another one of those moments where you go, yeah, we're never going to do that again. We're always going to make sure when we spend money that it's actually going to work and generate results. So what has kept us sane when we've had all these hard moments, and I look back and think about, there's really, the 3 parts of our business that are so important. 1 is obviously the customers. 2 is the technology that we have. And 3 is our employees. Because if you're a service business, you can't deliver great service unless you have great employees. It just is absolutely impossible. They have to be engaged and awesome. So these are some of the things that I would say were our keys to staying successful. Number 1 is market development. So that is kind of over here with technology and customers. Market development is not just market research. It's literally getting into the trenches with customers and truly understanding their needs and behaviors in detail. Doing interviews one-on-one with people. To really draw out what their needs are, what their desires are, what their problems are, and then putting beta product in front of them to understand whether you're going to really solve their problem. That has been something that we've always done. It's been a huge part of our business, and I think has been a key to our success. One great example I have is when we were trying to figure out how to do location technology on our family caregiver app with with the devices for older consumers, right? So the family caregiver has their app, they're getting information about how mom is doing. Mom has our phone or another device. And there was this privacy issue of mom doesn't necessarily want location on the family caregiver app. Well, instead of just plowing ahead with the technology, which 10 years ago I might have done, we sat down and literally pulled families together of the caregiver and the older consumer in a room and literally went through interviews of potential solutions and how to do this. And so we finally came up with the solution that you could turn off the finding it on the map, and that solved the privacy issues. But you could keep the alerts of things like mom got to the doctor's office okay, mom got home okay, and just have a list of specific locations that were acceptable for mom to be known that she was at. So church, doctor's office, maybe grocery store, community center, whatever it would be. But if mom wants to go to her secret boyfriend across town that she doesn't want you to know about, that it just says she's out and about. So that was a great example of customer development, true customer development. It's the only real way to get there. You have to be out there talking to people. We've talked about pricing a lot here. Our whole goal was we've always been trying to grow this market because too many people come into the space, keep prices high, and it actually artificially keeps the market too small. So when we launched our personal emergency response devices, we came out literally at half the price of market saying, we want to grow the market, we want to actually stimulate the market. And I think when I look at organizations like St. Barnabas and what they're doing and making some of these things accessible to the greater population, that's a really important thing that we have to keep figuring out. How do we get costs down on the technology? How do we get costs down on the services so we can make it more accessible to a larger population? A really key point. On the technology side, we're a follower, and if you're serving the older consumer space, I think you probably should just be a follower too. I don't know. If you start going into the latest and absolute greatest of crazy technology, you might start to get away from, again, those technology profiles that are necessary. And then on the employee side, because I don't want to forget about this, we developed a very strong sense of empathy for our customers. So we train all of our employees in understanding older consumers and how to actually be able to talk respectfully and passionately and have empathy for them. But then that means we also have to have empathy for employees and really putting our feet in their shoes and understanding how they're servicing customers is a very important part of it. So empathy, a very, very important part of servicing this demographic as well, and wellness. So here we are talking about keeping our customers well, so we really put a lot of emphasis on bringing a lot of those new digital health programs and wellness programs and insurance discount programs into our employee base as well to really make that happen. Okay, I'm going to run out of time, so I'm going to have to move on from the stories, and I'm going to talk about the future. So to us, the future is really about predictive analytics. Predictive analytics is really going to be the key, and that's the ability to use information off of some of this technology in the hands, homes, or bodies of the older consumer and using that to predict health outcomes. And one thing to remember is the more passive it can be, the better. If it happens automatically, that's awesome. So a couple of sensors in the home, a bed sensor or whatever it may be, that just works and you don't actually have to have anybody do anything like, oh, at this time I need you to get up, I need you to take your blood pressure, and then I need that to connect Bluetooth into this app that's gonna, that's huge, huge barriers to making that happen. So passive is great. A few sensors around the home, that's what we really focused on. And one of the studies that was completed last year, using in-home sensors, we were able to actually prove a 16% reduction in the healthcare costs of the dual eligible population that we were working with by literally taking the information off the sensors, developing algorithms that were able to predict that something was going wrong. So an easy example is there's a sensor that goes in the back of the toilet that just floats in there, so you know if there's bathroom use is increasing, you know if kitchen use is increasing by having a fridge sensor, you know if sleeping patterns are changing with the bed sensor. So using that, you can identify the onset of a likely urinary tract infection that it can be resolved very simply if caught early with antibiotics, but if allowed to exacerbate for a long time can become an expensive emergency room visit. So using this information, it was actually being able to prove that there was a 68% reduction in long-term care costs and a 39% reduction in emergency room visits. There was an increase in medications. There was an increase in some nurse usage and some telehealth usage. So it all offset and rounded out to about a 16% decrease. So some very, very powerful numbers coming out of that study, and we think that is going to be more and more of the future. The other thing in the future is fall risk prediction. So the company that we work with for our fall detection just finished this study. It literally is very, very fresh, brand new study that has not even been published in a mass journal yet, but where they have actually been able to produce, be able to predict falls based on pendant data with the accelerometers, based on gait capabilities and everything else. And they were able to clean even for the level of activity. Because historically, you would say, oh, well, if you are up and about more and doing more activities, you're more likely to fall. Well, that doesn't help any very much, right? Say, okay, well, wait, so stop doing so much activity so you have a lower likelihood of falling. That's not helpful. So this study actually cleaned for all that and showed that based on this data, you could see the potential of a fall coming, which obviously could be a massive, massive breakthrough if we could actually get to that capability. And I think I heard Barbara say, well, we don't have fall elimination yet. Well, this is almost getting there, right? Because now you can go analyze footwear, you can analyze medications, you can analyze the house if you're seeing that something is happening that is likely that there is going to be a fall in the near future. The most important thing that we can all do is raise awareness, because as I was mentioning with my work group earlier, the biggest problem that is out there today is there's not many companies with $50 million marketing budgets like we have today, where we can go out and educate the market on these solutions that are out there for family caregivers, that are out there for older consumers. There just aren't that many companies out there. So we all need to kind of work together to lift the boat, because right now we have to focus on primary market stimulation. There isn't an existing market, a secondary market that's just out there today. There is no market out there where people, I like to say it's like, people wake up in the morning. So here's the example. Does everyone know what the difference between primary and secondary demand is? Yes? Okay. So secondary demand is like for large screen televisions. I've decided I need a large screen television. And I wake up in the morning and I say, I need a large screen television. Now I'm just going to go down to Best Buy and I'm going to decide which one to choose, right? That's secondary market demand. Okay, we're still in a market where that is not happening. There are very few family caregivers, except for maybe a few in this room, that wake up the day that they realize they are now a family caregiver and say to themselves, I'm sure there's some technology out here that is going to fix this problem that I have, and so let me just, go down to Best Buy and see which one would be the best solution. That's not happening. So that's where there's a massive shift between having to spend, a ton of money to try to educate somebody about your solution that you have, all of you people out there with all these amazing solutions, having to go out there and explain to people that this is possible, versus them already understanding that. And the only way we're going to get there is if we work together as a group to kind of raise the overall, what we really need is like a Got Milk commercial, but so that maybe long-term is something we can work on. But in the meantime, we need to continue to do events like this. We need to keep working with groups that are passionate about serving seniors like St. Barnabas and other groups in this room to work together to raise awareness of all the different solutions that are out there so that we can help people solve their problems using new, interesting solutions and new methods of doing that. So on that note, I'm going to actually pass it off for the closing remarks. Thank you.